In the last video, we explored ideation as working with ideas. We defined it as the process of working with ideas. And we left off talking about how that process is done through the application of divergent and convergent thinking. So what are these things? What is divergent thinking and what is convergent thinking? Well, divergent thinking is ideation that invites lots and lots of possibilities, right? So when we're diverging, we're trying to come up with many ideas, as many possibilities as we can, and all of the ideas that we come up with are equally viable responses, okay? So any idea that you generate through divergent thinking is a good idea, right? There are no right answers and there are no wrong answers. The whole goal is just to get into that flow of coming up with lots and lots of ideas. So that's what you do when you're thinking divergently. So if I were to ask you a question and ask you the question of who are some great world leaders throughout history, right? Someone might come up with the idea of Nelson Mandela. Somebody else might come up with the idea of Barack Obama. Someone else might say Genghis Khan, right? So they might be, favorable people that you're naming, or they might be distasteful people that you're naming. However, we asked about great world leaders, right? All of the responses that you come up with are equally viable, right? So we don't really have too much to say in terms of discussion on that. You just kind of come up and generate as many ideas as possible. So that's what divergent thinking is. Well, what about convergent thinking? So convergent thinking is ideation that calls for one correct solution, right? So when we're diverging, we're coming up with lots and lots of ideas. When we're converging, we're kind of narrowing in on that one correct response, or that one correct answer to a question, that one correct solution, right? So whereas in divergent thinking, there are no correct or incorrect responses, in convergent thinking, you have one correct response, really, right? Or maybe a couple, right? But that's really what's happening with convergent thinking. Now, if we go with the same example of world leaders, if I were to ask you who is the 23rd Prime Minister of Canada, right? There's only one correct response, right? If I were to ask you who was the 44th President of the United States, or who is the 45th President of the United States, only one correct response for each of those questions, right? Those are convergent thinking style questions, right? Questions that call for only one idea, one solution, one correct response.